Hey guys, tonight we're climbing, not just metaphorically, but quite literally, into the sky. You're in Nepal now, high up, higher than you've likely ever been without needing a passport stamp or a panic attack. The air is thinner here, and the silence? It's not silence exactly, more like the sound of altitude itself, if that were a thing. A whispery stillness, broken only by a breeze that tastes like stone, moss, and old adventure. You're standing at the base of a mountain, but not just any mountain. This one's hiding a village partway up its jagged face. And unlike anything you've seen in modern times, this village has no roads, no trail, no switchbacks, just ladders, rope ladders, wooden ladders, bamboo ladders that look like they were made during someone's lunch break. All of them precariously dangling off cliffs, like someone forgot to install gravity properly. And yep, to visit this place, you'll be climbing. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Also, drop a comment with your location and the time you're listening. I love seeing how far we travel together at night. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You grip the first rung with cold hands. The rope creaks. You look up, and the ladder vanishes into the fog. There's no visible end, just the sound of bells. A goat, maybe, somewhere far above. Someone shouts in Nepali. A faint laugh follows. And with a deep breath, you begin to climb. Each footstep sends a mild jolt through the swaying ladder. Below you is, let's not talk about it. Best not to look down when the ground is more of a rumor than a guarantee. The village is called Kunde Lingpa, though locals just say, up home. You won't find it on Google Maps unless you know exactly what rock formations to zoom in on, and even then, you'd have to squint. It's built on 3 levels, like a stacked cake of peril. The first tier is where the school, the animal pens, and a single tea stall reside. The second holds most homes. And the third, well, that's the mystery floor. Reserved for elders, meditation caves, and people who've stopped caring about gravity. Ladders are the only way between these tiers, not stairs, not switchbacks, no secret elevators cut into the rock, just ladders. And on the windy days, those ladders swing like ropey metronomes, keeping time with your rising heartbeat. The locals? Oh, they make it look easy. A 10-year-old in flip-flops overtakes you halfway up, hauling a basket of onions and humming something from Bollywood radio. His grandma waves from above, gesturing you upward like it's all part of the welcome package. Why ladders? That's the part people in the valleys don't get. Scientists still argue about how such a settlement came to be. Some blame historic glacial retreats. Others point to older trade routes lost to landslides centuries ago. There's even a theory involving escaped monks and a jealous king, though that one smells suspiciously like a bedtime story that got out of hand. But the villagers will just tell you, it's because of the goats. Goats need space. Flat space is rare, so up they went with their livestock in tow. And once you've built a house clinging to a cliff face, you tend not to move unless something pushes you, like, say, an avalanche, or a very annoying drone influencer looking for authentic content. Back on the ladder, you pause to breathe. The air is thin, but there's also something intoxicating about it. Maybe the way it carries bird calls so clearly. or the moss-covered ridges that peek out like sleepy giants from the clouds. Geographically speaking, you're in the Manyang district, tucked deep in the Annapurna region. It's a part of Nepal known for its vertical villages, ancient salt trails, and yes, occasional earthquakes. The Annapurna Range looms nearby, like a row of gods watching you struggle up a rope. And just when your thighs begin composing a hate letter to your knees, you reach the first platform. Here, the village begins. There's no sign that says welcome, no gift shop. Just a broad wooden plank stretched across two rocks, a dog napping on it with one eye open. A lady boils something that smells strongly of garlic and possibility. And from a pulley rig above, a crate of firewood descends slowly, as if the sky is delivering groceries. The homes are wedged directly into the cliff. Built of timber and stone, they resemble the kinds of dwellings hobbits might create after attending architecture school. Everything feels handmade, and often remade. After every monsoon, after every windstorm, after every landslide that reminds the villagers that this is borrowed land, not owned. But there's pride here too. The ladders, they'll tell you, are part of them, part of their daily rhythm. Climbing is just walking, with more gravity and fewer options. Kids learn by age 4. Elders climb until their 70s. One man claims he delivered his own baby grandson while clinging to a rung with his teeth. Unverified, but vivid. The humor here is dry, like the lentils. "You don't fall," one woman says, handing you a cup of yak milk. "You just hurry in the wrong direction." As night creeps in, the village glows from inside out. Homes light up like lanterns strung along the mountainside. The stars begin to mirror the village below, a quiet echo of lights on both sides of the sky. And for a moment, you forget your aching limbs. You're just a flicker in the dark, clinging to a mountain where roads don't exist. And ladders are the only promises made. So, you've made it, more or less, to the first tier of this hanging village, where things somehow get even more vertical. You thought the climb up was the hard part? Adorable. Welcome to daily life, where everyone seems to be in a long-term relationship with gravity. And it's complicated. It's early morning now. The village is waking up. Not with alarm clocks. Those are for flatlanders. But with the creak of rope, the clank of buckets, and the occasional bleat of an irritated goat being hoisted 2 stories by its armpits. Someone sneezes from above you, and it echoes like a cannon. A man yells an apology in Nepali, and then, because this is how things work here, drops you a freshly baked flatbread in penance. You catch it like a grateful pigeon. This part of the village is more active than the others. Think of it as the main drag. If the main drag were a series of open platforms clinging to a vertical cliff. There are pulley lines running between homes, almost like tightropes, except instead of acrobats, they carry chickens in baskets. This isn't a joke. Chickens don't climb well. No grip. Too much panic. So, they travel via zipline, squawking their protests like commuters on a Monday. Children dart across narrow wooden beams with the confidence of squirrels. Grandmothers sweep their wooden patios with handmade brooms that seem entirely symbolic in the wind. One man pulls himself up a ladder with a jug of water strapped to his back and a cigarette in his mouth, as if to balance out the health benefits. Geographically, this area is part of the Trans-Himalayan Zone, a dry, rain-shadow region that looks nothing like the lush Nepal of postcards. It's dusty, brittle, and wildly beautiful. Think canyons carved by wind, cliffs like crumpled origami, and air so dry it exfoliates your face whether you like it or not. Water is a chore here. The main spring bubbles out from a crack 2 ladders below, and villagers fetch it in shifts. Each person has a system: ropes, pulley wheels, or just sheer calf strength. If you're lucky, you'll spot an old woman with arms like braided cables, balancing a full jug on her head while climbing one-handed. It puts every gym session you've ever had into shameful context. Scientists still argue over how long this settlement has existed. Some suggest 400 years, citing the stone tools found nearby. Others say the cliff structures are only 150 years old, built after a landslide wiped out the lower valley village. And then there are those who believe the architecture evolved from a specific type of Himalayan monastery built for isolation and reflection. Except here, it's more about not falling into the abyss while cooking rice. Speaking of cooking, the air smells amazing. People here use wood-burning stoves that give everything a deep, smoky flavor. Smoked lentils, smoked tea, smoked everything including your socks if you sit too close. Kitchens are tiny, often just a single open flame and a few iron pots hung from hooks. Some have outdoor prep areas perched on wooden slats that seem wildly under-inspected for load-bearing safety. Still, somehow they balance pots, people, children, and the occasional dog with preposterous ease. Oh, and here's a fringe detail you'll love. Each house has its own signature knot. Since the homes are vertically stacked and connected by ropes, it's important to identify which rope leads where. So each family uses a different knot pattern to secure their ladder or pulley lines. Figure 8, double bowline, some creations that look like spider webs drunk on geometry. It's not just practical, it's social. A wrong knot? That's like wearing someone else's shoes to their wedding. You're beginning to notice that verticality changes everything. There are no streets, so movement is almost entirely up or down. Someone wants to visit a cousin 2 homes over? That means climbing up one rung ladder, crossing a slat bridge, then dropping down another ladder while yelling, "I brought pickles." And yes, there's mail. Sort of. A teenage girl delivers messages by running pulley lines between homes and sending down handwritten notes in tiny pouches. She's faster than Wi-Fi. She also charges in lentils or goat cheese, depending on urgency. You settle on a broad platform where 3 families share a communal space. There's a bench, some stacked firewood, and a cat that looks like it's either a village elder or a minor deity. It watches you with silent judgment as you attempt to sip hot butter tea without grimacing. Spoiler, you fail. Butter tea is a savory, salty, slightly rancid-tasting beverage that locals swear by and tourists survive. The trick is not to smell it before drinking. One elderly man gestures for you to come closer. He's weaving something, rope of course, and he speaks in slow, deliberate phrases through a thick accent. You gather that he's a ladder maker, 5th generation. His tools are handmade, mostly bone-handled, and he's currently repairing the school ladder, which apparently cracked under the weight of ambition. You're not sure if he's joking. It's hard to tell when everything is said with a mountain's patience. He tells you a story, half true, half legend, of a man who once tried to install stairs. Stairs. The villagers laughed him out of his own home, apparently. They said stairs were for people who don't trust their ankles. Later, someone sets up a small shrine, a candle, some dried flowers, a stick of incense. It's not for a god, they say, but for a boy who once fell and lived. The candles for luck, the flowers for memory, and the incense. That's to confuse the wind spirits. Above you, the sky has turned sapphire. Below, the clouds drift like lazy sheep, sometimes revealing slivers of valley floor, so far down it looks fictional. And as you lean back, feeling the whole structure sigh with the wind, you start to get it. You're suspended, not just physically, but emotionally. Caught in this quiet, impossible net of ropes and wood, held together by tradition, balance, and a startling trust in things that sway. You wake to the sound of bells, not church bells or alarm bells, more like dozens of tiny cowbells tied to the necks of small children. And in a way, they are. It's school day. And here, school doesn't just start with a bell. It starts with a vertical commute that would make an alpinist raise an eyebrow. The village's only schoolhouse sits on a lower ledge, nearly 250 feet down from the main cluster of homes. You lean out cautiously from one of the walkways and spot it, a brightly painted wooden structure, no larger than a shipping container, balanced precariously on a stone platform like a child's toy set on the edge of a staircase. And now, here come the students. They appear like ants, emerging from various ladders and slat bridges, their uniforms a patchwork of sweaters, shawls, and rubber sandals. No buses, no carpools, just rope, resolve, and sometimes older siblings acting as reluctant Sherpas. One boy swings down with a satchel made of jute, its sides bulging with what may be books or possibly snacks. He whistles a tune as he descends, hooking his feet expertly through each rung. Hands moving fast, muscle memory doing most of the thinking. Below him, a girl waits her turn with arms folded, and the kind of world-weary look only 12-year-olds can master. Scientists still argue whether this setup promotes early independence or just chronic anxiety. But studies, or what passes for them in scattered anthropological fieldwork, suggest that children here develop excellent proprioception, an intuitive sense of where their body is in space. Probably because if they don't, they end up in space. And then there's the ladder itself. The school ladder is a marvel of village engineering. It's thickly braided from a mix of woven yak hair and imported nylon, with hand-wrapped bamboo stabilizers every 5 feet. They replace sections every few months, mostly due to wear. And once, they say, because a goat chewed halfway through it out of spite. Whether or not the goat knew it was chewing a school access route is still hotly debated in local gossip circles. Halfway down the ladder, there's a small rest platform, a glorified plank, really, where students occasionally pause to readjust their packs or their life choices. From here, you can see the whole cascade of movement. Kids inching down, a teacher slowly climbing up, and one elderly man waving a thermos of tea like a flag from his front porch. Down at the school, the vibe is equal parts chaos and miracle. It's a one-room affair, with walls that don't quite close and a ceiling that leaks optimism during the rainy season. There's a blackboard, some chalk nubs, and a stack of textbooks that look like they were last updated around the same time fanny packs were cool the first time. And yet, the energy is bright. The teacher, a wiry woman in her 30s, with an alarming command of multiplication tables and sarcasm, welcomes each child by name. Some sit on mats, others on low stools. There are posters on the walls, maps, alphabets, a diagram of a frog that someone's drawn eyebrows onto for reasons unknown. You're told that literacy rates here are surprisingly high, not because of government funding. What government official in their right mind would climb a mountain for a site visit? But because education is one of the few things families can invest in that doesn't fall off a ledge during high winds. There's even a makeshift science lab. A shelf holds jars of herbs, preserved beetles, and one murky container labeled Mystery Tadpole. The kids adore it. "We think it's evolving," one boy says seriously, "or just tired." You stay for a lesson, basic geography, fittingly, and watch as the children recite the names of rivers and capital cities in sing-song voices, their words rising into the thin air like prayers. One child asks, "Where does the wind go when it's done?" The teacher nods like this is perfectly reasonable, then answers with a story about sky spirits playing tag between the peaks. Here's your quirky tidbit. Once a month, a traveling librarian visits. That would be a wiry man with dreadlocks and a huge backpack filled with books, comics, and laminated National Geographics from the 1990s. He arrives via the same ladders, grumbling to himself in 3 languages, and stays long enough to lead story hour before vanishing into the cliffs like a myth. Lunch is eaten in small clusters under the sun. Lentils, rice, pickled vegetables wrapped in cloth, and chunks of fried dough. No cafeteria, no vending machines. Just good old-fashioned hand-me-down tiffin boxes and a rock to sit on. One girl kindly offers you a bite of her fried radish, which tastes surprisingly like spicy hope. But not everything is idyllic. Teachers here are few, resources fewer, and turnover high. Once, a young volunteer from Kathmandu arrived full of ambition. He left 2 months later, citing recurring vertigo and unresolved ladder trauma. The village still sends him polite postcards. One local carpenter explains that the school was originally intended to be built higher, closer to the homes. But during construction, a rock slide changed the plans. And in true cliff dweller fashion, everyone just adapted. "We don't argue with the mountain," he says with a shrug. "It's not a good listener." Before the students head back up for the day, the teacher rings a bell fashioned from a yak's horn, hollowed and polished. You watch as the kids queue up, adjusting their bags and bandanas, ready for another vertical trek. Climbing after a day of lessons might sound exhausting, but to them, it's just homeward, and somehow it's gentler. The ladder doesn't creak as much. The wind is quieter, maybe because they know every rung by heart. You follow from a distance, pausing halfway up, feeling the sunlight touch your face and the mountain hum beneath your fingers. You glance back at the school, tiny now, like a forgotten chess piece balanced on the edge of a dream. So, now you've got the hang of ladders. Sort of. Your calves complain quietly. Your hands have adopted a permanent rope burn aesthetic. And you've developed a sixth sense for judging bamboo integrity with one cautious toe. Congratulations. You're halfway to being a local. But then the rain comes, and everything you've learned? Useless. Monsoon season doesn't arrive with warning. It descends like a decision already made. One moment, the sky is crisp and polite. The next, it's weeping violently on everything in sight. Clouds surge in like they're late for a meeting. And then it's just vertical water. Everywhere. The ladders, your once trusty companions, become death traps. Rope swells, bamboo slicks over with algae. Even the knots, the sacred signature knots, start to twitch under the weight of relentless, hammering wet. You clutch each rung like it owes you money. The village transforms overnight. Pathways vanish beneath mud. Pulleys seize up. Everyone wears large plastic ponchos that make them resemble walking tarps, while goats take shelter under anything remotely horizontal. The communal goat, nicknamed Bunti, claims your drying towel as her personal cloak. You decide not to argue. Geographically, this region sits just within the monsoonal corridor, catching some of the worst of the South Asian wet season. Annual rainfall can reach upwards of 3,000 millimeters, and most of it arrives with theatrical flair. Thunder echoes through the cliffs like bowling balls dropped from the sky. Lightning dances in close enough to count the bolts, and yes, ladders have been struck before, though only once, and the ladder was immediately renamed the Hot One. Villagers adapt with frustrating grace. It's as if the weather is just another eccentric uncle they put up with. Children play barefoot in puddles. Women scrub laundry under sheltering eaves. And one man attempts to grill corn in the downpour, using a heat lamp powered by sheer will. But let's be honest, for outsiders, this is when the village feels genuinely uninhabitable. The ladders no longer look dangerous. They are dangerous. People fall. It's rare, but it happens. One woman shows you her scar from a 3-meter slide, followed by a dramatic feet-first crash into a chicken coop. The chickens, she says, never trusted her again. Still, no one leaves. Monsoon comes, monsoon goes, an old woman tells you, her voice cracking like wet paper. She's weaving reeds for a new roof panel, sitting under an awning held up by one heroic stick. But the mountain stays. So do we. You try to help bail water from a neighbor's flooded sleeping platform. The trick, apparently, is to flick your wrist just so. Otherwise, it splashes back at you with malicious glee. Within minutes, your boots squelch like overcooked squash. A boy hands you a chunk of hardened barley and laughs. Now you are very mountain man, he declares like it's an honorary title. Your quirky tidbit of the day? The village holds an annual ladder blessing festival just before monsoon hits. Locals gather to decorate the primary rope systems with marigolds, paint protective symbols on the ladders, and, get this, chant to the spirit of grip. It's unclear whether the spirit is an old legend or someone's uncle in a mask, but the prayers are sincere. Stay sticky, not slippy, they whisper over and over again. You learn new vocabulary during this season. Words like mid-slide recovery technique and emergency hammock staging. Every home has a backup ladder stashed behind it, wrapped in oiled cloth like a sacred scroll. You also discover the art of static sitting, just staying very still in one dryish spot, waiting for the rain to take a lunch break. Some villagers carry umbrellas, but only for humor. The real heroes are the rain cloaks made of woven plastic and goat hair, durable enough to survive a minor apocalypse. One woman wears a hood so enormous she could smuggle a toddler inside and no one would know. Scientists still argue whether humans were ever meant to settle in places like this. You hear phrases tossed around like resilience through adversity and vertical adaptation. But here on the ground, or ledge more accurately, no one's theorizing. They're just patching roofs, boiling tea, and occasionally yelling at clouds like their stubborn cousins refusing to leave a party. By the third day, the rain becomes less aggressive and more habitual. It's just there. You grow used to the constant percussion. You develop an intuitive sense of when a ladder has passed the threshold from moist to suicidal. And one night, you sleep deeply to the sound of droplets tapping gently against your tarp-covered roof, like distant applause. Then something changes. The clouds break. You wake to a golden morning, sunlight flooding across wet rooftops, steaming gently off the rocks. The air smells like moss, citrus, and triumph. You step out and see the ladders drying like sleeping snakes in the light. One child climbs with a whistle in her mouth, playing a cheerful tune you don't recognize. Someone above shouts, "Clear skies," and several heads pop out to confirm the miracle. The village is electric with activity. People clean, rebuild, string laundry between cliff bolts. There's an energy that feels like starting over, but casually, as though they've done it 1,000 times before. You help one man tighten the knotwork on a critical corner ladder. He smiles and hands you a tool that looks like it was made from half a wrench and an old toothbrush. "Good for tension," he explains, and you nod like you understand tension on any level, beyond emotional. By the end of the day, the wind returns. Not the storm wind, but the clean mountain breeze that smells like possibility. And as you lie back that evening, on a rock warmed by sun and stories, you realize something oddly comforting. The ladders are still there, still swaying, still waiting. And so is everyone else. The goats are yelling again. Not bleating, yelling. There's a specific tone they use when they're annoyed, which is often. It's part of the rhythm here, like roosters in the valley or car alarms in the city. In Kunda Lingpa, goat complaints are the local soundtrack. You turn your head toward the noise and see the morning goat parade in full swing. Ladders creak under the weight of animals being coaxed, pushed, or occasionally carried up or down the mountain, depending on the day's grazing plan. One man is halfway up, with a particularly stubborn goat draped across his shoulders like a fussy scarf. The goat makes eye contact with you, as if to say, "I was not consulted about any of this." In this village, the goat is king. The local economy runs on 4 hooves, 2 horns, and an attitude problem. The elevation doesn't allow for much agriculture. You might see a few terraced patches clinging to the slopes. Barley, potatoes, some herbs if you're lucky. But the real livelihood comes from livestock. Goats provide milk, meat, wool, and most importantly, status. A person's herd is their resume, their savings account, and their therapy session all in one. And just like people know their neighbors by voice, villagers know each of their goats by the sound of its sneeze. No, really. You stand in the communal pen, a loosely roped-off flat rock plateau 2 ladders below the main housing cluster, and one elderly woman insists on introducing you to her prize goat, Biri. She sneezes like a cough with hiccups, she says proudly. You wait. Sure enough, Biri obliges, with a snort that sounds like someone losing a sneeze mid-sentence. "That's how I find her in the fog," the woman says with a wink. Quirky, yes, but effective. The goats are remarkably well adjusted to vertical life. They treat cliff edges like suggestions. Some of them even have custom-made hoof covers, little strips of rubber tied with string, to help grip the slippery stone in wet weather. Fashionable and functional, like if Crocs had a mountain death-defying collection. One of the more innovative contraptions is the goat lift, a pulley-based transportation basket lined with straw, used for moving older or injured goats up or down steep stretches. You witness a villager gently place a goat into the lift, secure it with what you swear is a child's seatbelt, then lower it down 2 stories while humming a lullaby. The goat chews on a leaf the entire ride, completely unbothered. Goats even have their own version of school, a training ledge where kids, the goat kind, learn to balance, climb, and follow bell cues. Villagers teach them with a mix of whistles, food bribes, and light threats. If a goat misbehaves, say, choose the ceremonial ladder again, it gets temporary pen time and a very stern talking to. Geographically, this isn't an unusual setup for remote Himalayan settlements. Livestock becomes a necessity when terrain limits agriculture. Goats, yaks, and sheep are essentially biomachines that convert sparse vegetation into something usable: wool, milk, protein, and compost. In Kunde Lingpa, though, the reliance on goats is elevated, literally, to an art form. Scientists still argue about whether the genetic makeup of these mountain goats has shifted over generations to adapt to vertical life. There's speculation about shorter legs, lower centers of gravity, even heightened spatial awareness. Others claim it's all nurture, not nature. Show any creature a ladder enough times, one researcher writes, and eventually it learns which side is safer to poop from. You spend the afternoon following a herder on his usual loop: 4 ledges, 3 ladders, and 1 terrifying jump. He walks barefoot, nimble and sure, while the goats follow behind like students on a chaotic field trip. You learn that each goat has a call, a specific tone the herder uses to summon individuals. One sounds like a hoot, another like a wet hiccup. When you try, your goat just ignores you and walks away, proving you've got a lot to learn. Midway through the route, the herder pauses and points to a small shrine built into the rock. It's barely a foot tall, decorated with faded prayer flags and a little painted hoof print. "That one's for the goat guardian," he says. "She keeps the kids from jumping off cliffs." You blink. She? He nods solemnly. Of course, male spirits get distracted. Fair enough. Later, during the golden hour, when the cliffs turn copper and the clouds trail their shadows like scarves, you sit with a group of women weaving rope harnesses. They're laughing at a story involving a goat, a tourist, and an unfortunate misunderstanding about sacred cheese. You don't catch every word, but the tone is unmistakable. Mischief, warmth, and deep-rooted familiarity. One woman hands you a cup of warm milk, sweetened with herbs. "From the quiet one," she says, nodding toward a goat standing majestically on a rock like a mountaintop philosopher. She doesn't sneeze. She just judges. The goats bed down at dusk, curled in piles that resemble beige rugs with ears. The wind rustles through their fur, and their bells chime gently, creating a lullaby of rusted metal and breath. And as you sit there, legs dangling over a platform, the scent of wool and hay in the air, it occurs to you. Here, ladders aren't the only thing keeping this village up. It's goats, too. Goats and knots, and people who know exactly which sneeze means hello. You're sitting on what can only be described as a sky porch. It's a narrow ledge with just enough room for one person, a kettle, and an unnervingly cheerful dog that keeps wagging its tail a little too close to the edge. All around you, the mountain sighs in late afternoon light. Above your head, ropes. Beside your feet, more ropes. Crossing in front of your face like determined vines? Yep, even more ropes. This isn't just a mountain village, it's a woven one. Everything here is suspended, knotted, or lashed. Ladders, walkways, pulley systems, clotheslines, goat lifts, water buckets, even one suspiciously ambitious swing. If the earth stopped spinning and all gravity evaporated, this village would probably just float away, tethered only to itself. Welcome to the world of mountain knotcraft. There's an entire unspoken system behind the rope work here. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. Every knot has intent. Every twist has history. There's the double bend granny loop used for carrying water jugs, the figure eight side lock for stabilizing sleeping platforms, and the long braid monkey twist, which sounds fun, but is mostly used to keep goats from escaping their baskets. You're introduced to a man they call Lachi Dai, part handyman, part wizard, full-time rope whisperer. He's been maintaining the village's connective threads for over 30 years. He wears a hat made of canvas and quiet authority. And when you ask how many knots he knows, he answers with a shrug. Enough to stay alive. You follow him on his rounds, watching as he tests tension on various lines. Some of these ropes span 20 feet across open air, connecting home to home, or home to chicken coop, or chicken coop to nothing. That one, Lockie says, pointing to a floating basket swinging in the breeze, was for my wife's laundry, before the wind took her nightgown to Tibet. There's a rhythm to this maintenance, a daily dance between wear and renewal. Ropes fray, wood swells, knots loosen under sun and strain, but everything is watched, tended, patched before it fails. In Kunde Lingpa, infrastructure isn't made once. It's remade constantly. You help retie a ladder segment using a loop you vaguely remember from summer camp. Lockie inspects it, frowns, and silently replaces it with something 3 times more stable using half the rope. You're not offended. You're impressed and mildly humbled. Here's your mainstream fact. In remote Himalayan settlements like this one, communities often develop bespoke engineering systems to compensate for lack of formal infrastructure. In Kunde Lingpa's case, the entire vertical grid is essentially a living machine. Pulleys transport fuel and food. Hammocks double as freight containers. And don't even get started on the bamboo suspension bridges, one of which you're about to cross. It stretches between 2 stone outcrops, maybe 40 meters apart, hanging over a drop that seems less like down and more like into the forgotten realm. The bridge sways gently in the wind, held by cables wrapped in cloth to prevent fraying. You're handed a walking stick for balance and, very encouragingly, a small rope harness just in case. As you inch across, the world opens up. The cliffs ripple below you, softened by distance. Hawks circle. Somewhere to your left, a radio crackles a folk tune. You keep moving, because if you stop, your legs will remember they're supposed to be scared. Halfway across, you notice carvings on one of the bamboo slats. Names. Dates. One says simply, "Still Alive, 2014." On the other side, a platform awaits. It leads to a quieter section of the village. Less crowded, more weathered. You're told this is where the elders live. Fewer goats, more books, and a lot of intricate knots hanging like prayer beads from doorways. One woman invites you in. Her fingers are knotted like the ropes she ties. She makes a living crafting emergency descent harnesses, kits made from folded hemp, thin metal rods, and tiny bells to alert neighbors during a fall. She shows you one, tucks it into a woven pouch, and says gently, "Hope you never need it." Quirky tidbit? Each home's main support rope has a name, not officially, but emotionally. That's Old Snake, one man says of the line connecting his kitchen to the grain shed. She's held my dinner for 11 years. Another laughs and points to a thick blue cord. That's divorce rope, My ex-wife left on that one. As night settles in, the ropes sing. It's not metaphor. They actually hum. When the wind moves through the stretched lines, it creates a soft, low whistle, like a cello being tuned by ghosts. It's strangely comforting. You sit and listen as the village sways around you. Scientists still argue about whether these kinds of micro-infrastructures should be considered official transport systems. Are they tools, artifacts, an alternative to roads? One camp argues for formal classification. Another insists they're simply adaptive improvisations. The villagers, meanwhile, just call it getting around. Back in your borrowed hut, you fall asleep under a tangle of ropes that form the ceiling, a handmade web that's part structural support, part storage system. There's a sleeping mat, a coil of spare ladder, and someone's birthday hat hanging from a peg. The wind rocks the platform gently. You drift off with the knowledge that you're suspended in a net of human willpower, inherited skills, and a whole lot of clever knots. The scent hits you first, a kind of buttery charcoal cloud wafting through the crisp morning air. It's smoky and sweet. And is that cumin? Your stomach tightens, then rumbles loudly enough to make a nearby toddler laugh and point. Welcome to Sky Kitchens, where breakfast isn't served so much as teased from fire and physics. The village's kitchens aren't all in one place. They're scattered like puzzle pieces across ledges, tucked behind rock faces, and occasionally suspended from ropes themselves. You're taken to one by a grandmother named Serene, who has the cheerful ruthlessness of someone who's cooked in high wind for 40 years. Her kitchen is a rectangular wooden shack, open on two sides, lashed to a stone shelf, with what you can only hope is very strong rope. The floor is bamboo slats. You can see the canyon below through the cracks. It adds a certain urgency to the cooking experience. Inside, a clay stove shaped like a squat, angry frog, a few shelves holding tin containers of dried herbs and legumes, and a whole wall devoted to hanging ladles, pots, spoons, sieves, and one decorative slotted spoon that she swears is just for slapping flies. Today's menu: tukpa, a noodle soup thick with garlic, root vegetables, and mysterious chili paste that Zering adds until it smells like a warning. You try to help, but your job is swiftly downgraded to onion peeler after nearly knocking over a precious jar of yak ghee. And so you sit, peeling and watching the real magic happen. Fire crackles, smoke billows out through a carved chimney pipe, and Zering moves like a dancer, one hand stirring, one hand waving at goats that dare come too close. Geographically speaking, this type of kitchen, semi-open, fire-based, and often communal, isn't unusual for rural Himalayan areas. But here, with no roads, no deliveries, and no restaurants, these kitchens are everything. They are stove, pantry, pharmacy, and social hub. A place to cook, gossip, bandage scraped knees, and gently interrogate new visitors like you. And then there's the spice wall. It's not huge, just 6 jars on a single shelf, but it's revered. Dried Sichuan pepper, ground turmeric, crushed garlic flakes, wild salt from the riverbeds below, and a chunky red powder labeled only as nose fire. You are strongly advised to use that one sparingly. As the soup simmers, a girl comes by with a bag of lentils she's just carried up from the lower fields. She delivers it by rope, of course. attached to a mini pulley that zips along a diagonal wire with all the grace of a squirrel on a mission. This is your quirky fact for the day. At least one kitchen here is powered partially by methane harvested from goat waste. Yes, you heard that right. A tinkerer down in Tier 2 has rigged up a biodigester using an old oil drum and some tubing. The system smells like a science fair that went too far, but it works. When firewood gets scarce in winter, a few stoves quietly switch over to goat gas. Not glamorous, the inventor tells you, but spicy soup makes up for the shame. You peek outside while Tsering tests the noodles for chewiness. Morning has taken full hold of the village. Smoke curls up from half a dozen rooftop chimneys. Pots clink. Voices echo. You can tell who's cooking what from the smells alone. Buttery millet to your right. Fermented soy pancakes above. And someone daring to deep fry yak cheese 3 homes over. Brave soul. Scientists still argue about how high-altitude cooking affects flavor. Some say water boils at lower temperatures, altering texture. Others insist smoke density changes with air pressure. Tsering just shrugs. If it tastes bad, add garlic. You're handed a bowl, clay, hand-fired, etched with what might be a goat doing yoga. The soup is thick, red, steaming. You sip. Your soul thanks you. The flavor is deep, earthy from the broth, punchy with chili, and rounded with that funky undertone of preserved mountain vegetables that taste like they've seen things. Tsering nods approvingly, then points to a small bottle. Pickle? You accept. Mistake. The pickle is lemon rind and something green that may or may not be related to a chili. One nibble, and your sinuses leave your body. You blink tears into your soup and try to look grateful. Tsering cackles like a Bond villain. Later, you help scrub pots with sand and ash. Soap is rare, but the village's sandy soil makes an excellent stand-in. Everything here has 2 purposes, sometimes 3. This is not a place of waste. As you work, a few neighbors drop by with trade offers. One has tea leaves, another brings salt, and a third asks to borrow Tsering's slotted spoon for moral reasons. She declines. Tensions rise. A deal is struck involving a fish hook, a foot massage, and 2 eggs. Everyone leaves satisfied. By mid-morning, the kitchen quiets. Pots hang back on their hooks, and the wind returns with a cooler edge. You sit for a moment, full, warm, and slightly emotionally altered by the pickle. Tsering joins you with a smaller bowl of soup for herself. No words are needed. You both sip. Look out. Over the cloud-snagged cliffs, and listen to the village breathe, ropes creaking, ladders shifting, the faint laugh of a child somewhere high above. This is cooking at altitude, equal parts survival and ceremony, where every meal is earned, every spoonful sacred, and the floor under your feet may or may not be entirely secure. But the soup's still hot, and somehow, that's all that matters. If you're wondering how people find love in a place where dinner involves ladders, goats, and chili-induced hallucinations, you're not alone. Romance in Kunde Lingpa doesn't come with candlelit restaurants or slow dance playlists. It comes with knot-tying, strategic pulley deliveries and an unspoken rule that if someone sends you a dried yak cheese wedge without asking, they're probably flirting. You heard that right. Yak cheese, equal sign, love language. It starts young. In a village with fewer than 200 people and more goats than surnames, everyone knows everyone else's business. Crushes don't last long in secrecy. You hear the term rope signals thrown around. Whistle codes tied to specific pulley systems used to send secret messages, or more often, not so secret gifts. You're sitting on a shaded perch, sipping a butter tea that tastes less terrifying this time, when you witness a classic move. A boy on Tier 3 slowly lowers a bundle down toward Tier 2 using a thin line. The bundle spins in the wind, revealing a small packet of herbs and something wrapped in faded cloth. The girl below catches it deftly and gives a tiny nod. She doesn't smile, too obvious, but the corners of her eyes crinkle. That's their second cheese, someone mutters beside you, grinning. You blink. Apparently, the courtship hierarchy here includes first cheese, second cheese, soup invitation, and finally, shared hammock time. It's all very structured, in a wildly improvised way. One couple you meet, Tenzing and Lakpa, are kind enough to share their story. He wooed her over 6 months, using only pulley baskets and handwritten notes, most of which included either poems or badly drawn goats. The clincher? A hand-woven rope bracelet he made with knots that spelled her name in an old local code only her grandfather still remembered. That's not just romantic. That's narratively satisfying. Geographically, social life in small mountain villages often depends on proximity and resilience. With little outside influence and limited mobility, traditions evolve in their own strange and beautiful ways. Here, without roads or electricity, emotional expression leans tactile. Gifts aren't flashy. They're practical, enduring, and occasionally edible. Weddings are infrequent but elaborate. When a match is agreed upon, usually after a few shared bowls of soup and a vigorous family discussion, the families host a feast that spans 3 ledges, 5 ladders, and an average of 11 near misses involving celebratory goats. The ceremony includes the ceremonial knot, which the couple ties together under the supervision of the village elder. If the knot holds through a full night of wind, it's considered a good omen. If it doesn't, well, people have opinions. Your quirky tidbit for the day? There's a legendary love ladder carved into the rock behind the elder's hut. It's said that any couple who climbs it at night in complete silence will stay together forever. Or, at least until monsoon season. The ladder is now mostly ceremonial due to its dangerously rotted state, but teenagers still sneak there in the dark. Nothing says romance like mild vertigo, one girl tells you deadpan. Flirting here isn't loud, it's subtle. A basket left in the right place, a whistle at the right time, a gift of sweet millet. And if a boy climbs 3 ladders in the rain just to deliver a packet of dried herbs, that's not just effort. That's basically a marriage proposal. But it's not all simple. Love comes with challenges in a village this size. Privacy is a myth. Gossip moves faster than pulley systems. One argument between a couple 3 years ago resulted in a rope divorce, where they quite literally cut the connecting line between their homes. For 2 days, the village was paralyzed with drama. Eventually, they tied a new rope, but upside down, as a symbol of starting fresh. It's still there, and kids now dare each other to climb it blindfolded. Scientists still argue about how isolation affects emotional bonding. Some believe tight-knit communities like this foster deeper relationships through shared hardship. Others worry about pressure, conformity, and limited choice. But as one elder tells you, love here is not different, just harder to run away from. You witness another small moment as evening falls. An older couple sitting on a narrow bench, their feet dangling over open air, passing a bowl of lentils back and forth. They don't speak, just eat, quietly. Occasionally one of them adjusts the other's shawl. It's not grand, it's not poetic, but it's solid, like the ladders, like the knots, like everything else that's lasted here. You're invited to a community song night, part social gathering, part informal, courting ritual, part excuse to use the one guitar someone carried up 10 years ago. Everyone gathers on a large platform, rigged with extra safety lines, just in case someone gets too into the rhythm. The music is soft, echoing off the cliffs. Some songs are old, some improvised. There's laughter, teasing, shy glances. Someone offers you a roasted maize cob as a joke, and you realize, with a jolt, that it might actually be a proposal. You decline, gently. As the stars rise and the wind turns cooler, couples begin to peel off, climbing back toward their separate homes or shared hammocks. The songs fade, the ropes still creak. Somewhere, a pulley basket moves in the dark with a small squeak of hope. In a place where nothing comes easy, not love, not food, not even mail, the act of falling for someone is a choice you repeat every day. Through each climb, each meal, each awkward whistle from 2 ledges away. And somewhere, a second cheese is already on its way down. Sunday arrives with a sky the color of wet slate and the sound of someone tuning a harmonium 3 ladders away. That's how you know it's time for church. Yes, church. Up here, on a ledge. The chapel is unlike any you've ever seen. It's perched on a slightly wider rock platform than most other buildings, lashed with thick ropes to 2 anchor boulders and 1 ancient tree that seems permanently annoyed about being involved. It sways, not metaphorically, not emotionally, physically. The entire structure, wood, canvas roof, and prayer flags, moves in the wind like a hammock full of sacred intentions. You hesitate at the doorway. A man beside you leans in and says, "Don't worry, we have seat belts." And they do. Every pew, handmade from repurposed ladder planks, comes equipped with a cloth harness. Not fancy, not OSHA approved, but present. You buckle yourself in like you're about to ride a particularly philosophical roller coaster. Inside, it's peaceful, sparse. No stained glass, but the windows are framed with old climbing rope, dyed with turmeric and soot. There's a small altar with candles, a faded photograph of a monk, and a carved wooden cross that doubles as a shelf for the offering bowl. And for some reason, 2 hard-boiled eggs. The congregation trickles in slowly. Elders, young parents, barefoot children, and at least 2 goats who are not technically allowed, but whose presence is apparently between them and God. The preacher is an older woman named Ani Dolma, who has the voice of a tired waterfall and eyes that scan like a hawk's. She greets everyone by name, yes, everyone, and begins, not with a reading, but a simple question. Who got up this morning without slipping? 10 hands go up. Liars, she says, and everyone laughs. The sermon, if you can call it that, is more of a story session. A tale about a boy who lost a prized basket and followed it halfway down the cliffs, only to find a stranded bird and carry it back instead. The moral, as far as you can tell, involves gratitude, observation, and maybe gravity's mysterious plan for us all. Geographically, religious practice in Himalayan regions tends to blend traditions. You'll find Christianity, Buddhism, animism, and ancestor worship all layered into one high-altitude worldview that's more concerned with weather than doctrine. This chapel is officially Christian, but there's a prayer flag hanging beside the altar and a brass bowl filled with rice, both nods to local customs. The choir stands and sings. No instruments, just voices, slightly off-key, echoing against the rock and fluttering out through the canvas walls. It's haunting, humble, absolutely beautiful. Your quirky detail today. The chapel's bell rope isn't attached to a bell. It's connected to a small tin pot filled with dried beans. When the rope is tugged, the beans rattle just loud enough to be heard a few homes over. That's the call to prayer. It also occasionally doubles as the emergency weather alert, depending on context. Villagers tell them apart by rhythm. Fast for rain, slow for God. At some point during the service, the wind picks up. The chapel leans gently toward the edge. No one blinks. You grip your seatbelt harness a little tighter and glance around. Everyone else is just adjusting shawls, calming fidgety toddlers, and letting the creak of the structure fold into their prayers. Scientists still argue whether structures like this are feats of resilience or architectural madness. A few documentaries have tried to capture the logic behind cliffside building, but none of them manage to explain how comfort, faith, and flexibility somehow coexist in this impossibly precarious setting. As Annie Dolma puts it, God doesn't mind if your roof moves, just don't let your heart rust. After the service, people spill out into the sunlight. The wind dies down, and the platform steadies. You stand for a moment, watching families adjust their harnesses, hoist baskets, and climb their separate ways back toward lunch. A teenager smuggles one of the chapel's eggs into his pocket. No one stops him. You help unlash a side bench and carry it back to a nearby storage nook. Everything in this village is modular, even the church furniture. There's no storage room, just ledges and clever rope systems. It's like IKEA, if IKEA were operated by monks with altitude sickness. One man taps you on the shoulder. He's wearing a blue cap and carrying a notebook full of names. "You're our guest," he says. "You have to ring the bell." He leads you to the far side of the chapel, where the tin bean rattle pot hangs beside a prayer flag. You tug the cord. It rattles like applause from tiny spirits. Somewhere above, a woman laughs and waves at you. It's not exactly holy, this moment. Not grand, but it's deeply human. Faith here isn't about ceremony or perfection. It's about balance, literal and spiritual, about tying your faith to the same ropes that hold up your home and hoping they both hold in the wind. You climb back toward your lodging with the smell of incense in your clothes and the taste of egg still lingering. You pass one man repainting a weathered sign beside his ladder. It reads simply, "This way up. Also, keep your promises." It's not biblical, but it might as well be. It begins with a loud squawk, then another, then a high-pitched yell that could either be a man in trouble or a goat being dramatic. Turns out, it's both. You rush toward the sound and find 3 villagers trying to lower a makeshift stretcher down a steep ledge using a complex web of ropes. On the stretcher, a middle-aged man, one leg clearly broken, strapped in with woven cloth, and the look of someone both in pain and utterly unfazed. In a nearby basket, a chicken, screaming its head off. "Don't ask," one woman says. "We needed counterweight." Welcome to emergency medicine in Kunde Lingpa. Here, there are no ambulances, no paramedics, no emergency numbers to dial. What they have instead is a network of ropes, pulleys, and practiced improvisation, and a remarkable ability to stay calm while dangling someone upside down off a cliff. The chicken helicopter is more nickname than machine. It's a large, double basket pulley system that villagers use to transport the injured, or particularly lazy goats, down to the traveling medic base, a half-day's walk below. The term came from a famous 2011 incident involving a fractured arm, 2 chickens, and a rope pulley that snapped halfway down but was caught just in time by a teenage boy with the reflexes of a caffeinated cat. You follow the team as they stabilize the lines. One woman barks commands like a military general. Tension 2, rear pulley clear, no slack on that chicken. It sounds ridiculous, and yet it works. The pulley system is anchored to 3 different houses, all modified over time to withstand lateral loads. The rope itself is a braided hybrid of climbing cord and locally woven hemp, replaced every 6 months whether it needs it or not. And yes, there's a backup system involving a lower ladder and a hand-carried stretcher, but that's rarely used unless the wind gets too dangerous for a lift. Geographically, the remoteness of villages like Kunde Lingpa often leaves formal health systems at the mercy of terrain. There's no helipad, no vehicle path. The nearest hospital is 2 ridgelines away and reachable only by foot. So the villagers build their own emergency response networks, often brilliantly creative, if slightly terrifying. Once the injured man is safely en route, you're invited to the clinic platform, a structure not unlike a very organized treehouse run by a nurse named Pima. She's trained, sharp-witted, and somehow manages to keep a freezer full of antibiotics powered by a small solar rig and 2 bicycle batteries. If the word resilient were a person, it'd be her. The clinic has a shortwave radio, a shelf of medical manuals, and one wall entirely devoted to hand-drawn diagrams of how to not fall off things. There's also a plastic skeleton, affectionately nicknamed Mr. Bones, used for both education and, judging by the smudges on his skull, the occasional prank. Pema walks you through the local first aid philosophy. There's a 3-tier system. Minor injuries, aloe, tea, and very strong language. Moderate injuries, bandage, pulley, Pima's judgment. Serious injuries, the stretcher and chicken combo, plus a team relay down the cliffs. There's also a spiritual emergency tier for when something just feels wrong. That involves the village elder, a bowl of yak butter, and a chant so powerful that even the goats get quiet. Your quirky tidbit for today? Kunde Lingpa once hosted an emergency mid-air appendectomy. Technically, it happened during descent. A man with suspected appendicitis was halfway down when he started losing consciousness. Pima rappelled down, tethered herself to the main pulley, and administered injections mid-swing while shouting instructions to a group of nervous relatives above. The man lived. The chicken involved in that descent? Traumatized, but also fine. Scientists still argue whether villages like this should be considered high-risk zones, or if their low incident rates are proof that tight-knit, self-reliant systems work just fine. One study tried to label this kind of environment medically unstable, but the villagers scoffed. We've had fewer fatalities than your average city traffic light, Pima says, wrapping gauze like a magician. And we've never lost anyone to vending machine collapse. Back in the communal zone, the villagers debrief. They talk through pulley tension, rope strain, and anchor strength like engineers, because in practice, they are engineers. Every adult here can tie 3 emergency knots, rig a harness, and perform basic triage. Children learn the difference between a scratch and a fracture before they learn multiplication tables. Someone asks if you'd like to try the pulley yourself. Not in an emergency, just for fun. You pause. Then, a moment later, you're climbing into a spare basket lined with goat fur. Your backpack strapped to the opposite side for balance. The rope creaks, the winch groans, and suddenly you're floating, just above the cliffs, with nothing but air beneath your toes, and a panoramic view of the village stretched across the rock face like a forgotten blueprint. It's peaceful and absolutely terrifying. Below, the valley yawns. You see tiny gardens, narrow footpaths, clouds dragging their shadows across distant terraces. Above, the mountain watches. You're not in control. Not really, but you're not afraid. The basket sways gently. You grip the edge. Someone shouts encouragement from a ledge. And slowly you understand. This place doesn't eliminate risk. It dances with it. And somehow, everyone knows the steps. The earth rumbles under your feet. Not a metaphor. Not poetic exaggeration. An actual rumble. Deep and low. Like the mountain is clearing its throat. For a moment, everything stops. Conversations halt mid-sentence. A child drops a ladle. One of the goats stares into the middle distance with its usual expression of judgment. Then, almost as quickly as it began, the tremor fades. No one panics. You, however, might be reevaluating your life choices. Just Tuesday, someone shrugs. Welcome to the part of mountain life no postcard dares mention. The constant, quiet fear of earthquakes and landslides. In Kunde Lingpa, danger isn't dramatic. It's routine. The entire village is built into a landscape that moves. A slow motion shrug of stone and soil that occasionally gets impatient. And yet, somehow, people here live with that knowledge the way city dwellers live with traffic. It's not a question of if, only when. Geologically speaking, the Himalayas are one of the youngest and most unstable mountain ranges on Earth. Formed by the ongoing collision of the Indian and Eurasian tectonic plates, the region experiences hundreds of tremors a year, most minor, some not. And then there are the landslides, triggered by rain, snowmelt, or sometimes just the mood of the terrain. These events can wipe out entire paths in seconds. You've seen the aftermath already. Half a ladder buried under boulders. A collapsed goat pen reassembled farther upslope. Someone casually referring to a missing boulder as the one we used to nap on. You meet an old man named Dorja, whose entire home was carried 30 meters downslope in 1997 during what locals call the sliding spring. He tells the story with a grin and a cup of barley tea. Woke up in the pantry, came out the window, found the house had moved without asking. He rebuilt. Everyone did. Because here, rebuilding isn't an exception. It's part of the rhythm. The village has adapted in dozens of subtle ways. Homes are lashed to rock with reinforced cables. Storage units are built with detachable walls so they can be moved after minor collapses. Critical paths have 2 or 3 alternate routes, even if it means adding an hour and 3 extra ladders to your trip. There's even an evacuation drill. Once a month, villagers practice what to do during a major tremor. Grab your essentials, tea thermos, rope kit, favorite goat, and move to the safe ledge. a wide rock shelf with emergency hammocks and supplies stashed in waterproof bins. You visit it yourself, marked by a painted handprint and an impressively angry-looking eagle carved into the stone. Your quirky tidbit today? During a landslide in 2009, the village school was buried under several tons of mud. No one was inside because just an hour earlier, a local dog had gone ballistic and refused to leave the building. The villagers evacuated, the slide hit, and since then, that dog has been sainted. There's a tiny shrine in his honor near the new school, complete with a rope collar and a bowl of dried fish someone keeps restocking, just in case his ghost gets snacky. You hear stories like that all day. A woman who lost her spice rack in a tremor, but saved her pressure cooker. A young man who dislocated his shoulder in a fall, but managed to tie his own sling mid-tumble. A grandmother who kept making tea as her floor tilted at a 45-degree angle. Tea before panic, she says. It's the rule. Scientists still argue whether people in such high-risk zones should be relocated. Urban planners write essays about sustainability, resilience, and hazard mapping. But in Kunde Lingpa, no one's waiting for outside approval. They've built their own systems, their own redundancies, their own quiet heroics. One villager shows you a rock calendar, a line of painted symbols on a boulder near the water source. Each mark records a past event, quakes, slides, even years of bad harvest. It's not decorative, it's data, a warning, a memory, and a promise all at once. As evening approaches, the village shifts into quiet vigilance. Wind picks up, clouds roll in. Someone tugs on an old pulley to tighten a support line. Kids are called inside, not in panic, but in preparation. It's the kind of readiness that doesn't shout, it just is. You help tie down a stack of firewood. Your fingers fumble the knot. A boy half your age fixes it with 2 quick flicks of the wrist and says, "You'll learn, or the mountain will teach you." Then he runs off to race a goat to the top tier. Later, tucked into your sleeping mat with rope overhead and the smell of smoked barley still clinging to your jacket, you feel a tiny tremor again. A soft jolt, like the ground beneath you shifted in its sleep. You don't flinch this time. You lie still. You breathe. And in the darkness, the ropes above your head creak softly, reassuringly, like an old lullaby made of tension and trust. It starts as a whisper, the kind that trails down from an upper ledge like mist. A story, half spoken, half sighed, passed from child to child, then elbowed into the ears of visiting strangers like you. They call him the Ledge Dweller. No one knows his real name, or if he ever had one. Some say he's a spirit. Others insist he's flesh and bone, just really good at hiding. A few claim to have seen him once, a figure in rags, perched impossibly on a sheer cliff face above even the highest tier of the village, watching, waiting, occasionally stealing shoes. Yes, shoes. And sometimes food. And on one occasion, a wedding shawl that was later found tied around a pine branch 3 ladders above the chapel, fluttering like some smug bird had taken up fashion. You ask the children about him, and they erupt with excitement. He lives above the smoke, says one. He eats only dried lentils, says another. He whispers at night if you're rude to your mother, adds a third helpfully. The adults smile, but don't deny it. That's the interesting part. You're told he's been around since before the second pulley was added, which, based on context, might be decades, maybe longer. Stories shift. Some say he's a lost monk. Others, a hermit from the valley who climbed too high and forgot how to climb back down. One particularly vivid tale describes him as a former rope master who, after losing a knot duel, yes, apparently that's a thing, exiled himself to the cliffs in disgrace. Geographically, the area above Kunde Lingpa is practically inaccessible. Jagged outcrops, no clear paths, and wind gusts that would knock over a yak in hiking boots. It's where no one lives, no one builds, and no ladder dares extend. But it's also the perfect breeding ground for folklore. You're invited on a ledge walk, a once-a-year tradition where older kids and brave fools climb to a high lookout point just below the supposed dwelling zone. We bring snacks, your guide says. He never shows up. But if you leave dried mango on the rock, sometimes it's gone in the morning. The climb is brutal. Narrow footholds, vertical rises, and ropes that fray under suspicion. You make it, panting, to the top of the safe zone. From here, the view is absurd. Clouds beneath you. The village looking like a string of beads tossed on a shelf. The sky so close, it feels like someone could just unzip it. You see no hermit, but someone's been here. There's a pile of rocks, carefully stacked in the center of the ledge. Not haphazard, arranged. Decorated with old yarn, dried petals, and one remarkably well-preserved boot. A child gasps. Told you. You leave your mango. Someone else offers a twist of tea leaves. The youngest kid solemnly sets down a pebble painted with a smiling goat. Then you all descend, quietly, like you're leaving a secret untouched. Your quirky tidbit today? In 2018, a drone enthusiast visited the village and attempted to fly a camera above the cliff face. The drone mysteriously crashed. When recovered 2 days later by climbers, the footage had been wiped. In its place, a 5-second video of a human hand holding up a wooden spoon and wagging it disapprovingly. Nobody claimed responsibility. The villagers have been smug about it ever since. Scientists still argue about the psychological role of folklore in isolated communities. Some say it's a coping mechanism for uncertainty. Others see it as a method of preserving values. Don't climb too high. Respect the cliffs. Share your mangoes. Whatever the explanation, the ledge dweller has a place in every child's bedtime tale. There's a drawing of him on the school's chalkboard wall. A pointy figure with wild hair and what might be wings, or just very dramatic shoulders. Underneath it reads, "He sees, he judges, he returns shoes if they fit." Back in the lower tiers, you talk to a woman who claims to have heard his flute. Late at night, she says, 3 notes, always the same, never closer, never farther. She shrugs. I like to think he's keeping watch. You press a little. Surely it's just a local prank. A way to keep kids from wandering too far? She smiles, tight-lipped. That's what I thought too, until I found my wedding earring tied to a prayer flag 3 years after it blew away. There's no punchline, just wind. At night, you lie on your mat listening to it. The ropes creak, the ladders shift. Somewhere above, a gust howls in a strange rising pattern, almost melodic. Not quite music, but maybe. And you wonder, what if he is there? Not a ghost, not a legend, just a person who chose stillness over company, who watches over the village without being seen, who knows every knot, every fall, every basket of mangoes left by children who believe he just might be real. You close your eyes, and you hope he liked the mango. It began with a girl, a phone, and a complete lack of fear of heights. She was 16. Her name, Nima. Her weapon of choice, a half-charged smartphone with a cracked screen, and exactly one social media app that still worked offline and uploaded in batches when she reached the signal zone, which only happened about once a week, if the wind behaved. One morning, Nima decided to film her daily climb from Tier 3 to the school on Tier 1, a casual, offhand decision. She tied the phone to her braid using an elastic band, muttered for the algorithm, and began her descent. The video opens with the ladder swaying beneath her. She hums a song. A goat bleats in the distance. Halfway down, she pauses to wave at her cousin. At the bottom, she turns the camera toward the misty valley and whispers, "Welcome to my commute." And somehow, the world noticed. The footage uploaded 6 days later when a visiting volunteer tethered a Wi-Fi hotspot to a prayer pole near the waterline. The clip hit TikTok, then Instagram, then YouTube. Within a week, Kunde Lingpa had 2.4 million views, a wave of breathless headlines, the mountain village with no roads, and a particularly enthusiastic beauty influencer asking whether yak butter could be used as lip balm. Answer: technically yes, spiritually no. That's when everything changed. Tourists began arriving. Not many, just a trickle. Mostly adventure vloggers and spiritual seekers. They came in hiking boots, carrying ring lights and overconfidence. One wore a neon windbreaker with the word Wanderlust printed in bold letters. He made it halfway up the main ladder before vomiting into his own tote bag. The villagers were amused. Some embraced the attention. Nima, now 17, runs a small video blog called High Altitude Diaries, where she posts slow motion clips of goats doing dumb things and the occasional ladder safety PSA. She signs off every video with, "Don't try this at sea level." Others are wary. One elder notes, "Before phones, people saw with their eyes. Now they look through machines." He's not wrong. There's a kind of distortion that happens when 1,000 strangers watch your daily breakfast, climb and call it hardcore, wilderness content. Geographically, this phenomenon isn't new. Remote locations often become sudden hotspots after going viral. Icelandic hot springs, Patagonian cliff villages, the infamous doorless bus ride in the Philippines all saw massive surges in tourism after a single viral clip. In Kunde Lingpa's case, the surge is slower, mostly due to the fact that no one can figure out how to get there. But word spreads. A travel blogger writes an article titled, "The Ladder Life, 72 Hours in the Sky Village." A documentary crew shows up, completely unprepared for how badly tripods behave on slanted rock. One YouTuber attempts a 24-hour cliff survival challenge and is politely escorted out by a grandmother who deemed him too loud to live. Your quirky tidbit? A Dutch clothing brand offered Nima a sponsorship deal to wear a branded windbreaker in her videos. She agreed, then painted over the logo with goat footprints as a local customization. The brand loved it. Sales doubled. Somewhere in Amsterdam, a very confused marketing team now believes goat print is the next big trend. But it's not all fun. With outside eyes come outside expectations. Tourists ask questions that don't translate. Where's the best coffee shop? Do you have a zip line for easier access? Can I ride a goat? That one didn't end well. Some even ask to rent ladders, as if they're bicycles. Nima tries to educate kindly but firmly. In one video, she says, "This isn't a theme park. It's our home. We live here because we want to." because we always have. Because the ropes hold more than weight, they hold our memories. Scientists still argue about the impact of digital exposure on isolated cultures. Some see it as empowerment, visibility, connection, economic opportunity. Others warn of erasure, where the pressure to perform authenticity replaces real life with curated content. Kunde Lingpa walks that line daily, feet on the rungs, eyes on the future. One upside? A young man named Dorje has started a ladder clinic. That's not a medical center. It's a ladder repair and inspection service. Funded in part by tourist donations, he replaces fraying rope, teaches knotwork, and even offers a safety orientation for newcomers. His motto, "If your rope talks, you should listen." You attend one of his workshops. It's half practical, half spiritual. He ties knots while reciting stories. He ends with, "To climb is to trust. To trust is to know who tied your rope." There's a moment of silence. Then, a tourist asks where the Wi-Fi is. Kunde Lingpa has never had a road, but now it has a hashtag, a footprint in the digital world. And while the village still sways with wind and waits for rain, it also pulses gently with the signal of someone uploading a goat sneeze in 4K. At sunset, Nima takes you to a ledge where she films her outro. The view is golden, the air quiet, the ladder behind her creaking gently. She looks into the lens. Another day, another climb, still here. And then, for once, she puts the phone down. Just for a while. By now, you've probably asked the question yourself. Quietly, maybe just once, while clinging to a rope in the wind, or spooning lukewarm lentils into your mouth at a dizzying height. Why do they stay? No roads, no real infrastructure, natural disasters, goat drama, chilly monsoons, and at least one ghostly cliff hermit who may or may not steal laundry. With everything these villagers endure, why haven't they packed up and moved to the flatlands? Or to Kathmandu? Or anywhere that doesn't require seatbelts in the chapel? Well, that's the great question, and scientists still argue about it. Some claim it's cultural inertia, that once generations of people build a life in one place, they tend to cling to it, even if it becomes impractical. Others point to ancestral ties, where identity is linked so deeply with landscape that relocation feels like self-erasure. Then there's the romantic theory, the psychogeography of vertical living, that the challenges of life here breed a kind of clarity, a discipline of thought, a closeness between people and place that's hard to replicate elsewhere. You ask Daring, the grandmother with the sky kitchen and the world's most expressive ladle, why she stays. She shrugs. I was born here. My mother was born here. My goats were born here. The wind knows me. The rock knows me. Where would I go and not be a stranger? Hard to argue with that. Still, not everyone stays forever. Some do leave, temporarily, permanently, in phases. Nima is thinking of attending a college program in Pokhara. Dorje spent 3 years working in a trekking lodge before returning to start the ladder clinic. And then there are the quiet goodbyes, families who disappear between seasons, ledges that go dark, ropes that dangle untied. But even those who leave often come back, or send things back. Money, medicine, dried fruit, solar panels, sandals, a strange kind of invisible circulation, like breath, like rope tension, out, in, out, in. One woman tells you about her son, now living in Dubai. He messages once a week, sends back photos of glass buildings and malls bigger than the whole mountain. But when she asks him if he's happy, he always says the same thing: I miss the air. You're starting to understand what he means. Because the air here isn't just air. It's time slowed down. It's silence that feels earned. It's distance from the overwhelming and a closeness to the essential. You don't feel invisible here. You feel small, yes, but very precisely placed. There's a kind of knowing in this village that doesn't translate well. A comfort with discomfort. A humor sharpened by repetition. A resilience that isn't brave or noble. It's just practiced. You watch a boy climb a ladder one-handed while balancing 3 potatoes and a cat. He doesn't see himself as special. He just is. And that's the thing. No one here sees their life as exotic. The ropes, the cliffs, the wind, the cheese, all of it is just normal. It's the tourists, the documentaries, the drone people who are strange. Your quirky tidbit for the day: there's a secret village competition, most normal climb. Once a year, elders vote on who can complete a 5-ladder, 3-tier circuit in the most unbothered manner. No dramatics, no flexing. Bonus points for carrying soup and not spilling it. The prize? A wooden ladle painted gold and a new spool of rope. Last year, a woman in her 70s won while singing. That's how they stay. Not because it's easy. Not because it's romantic. But because they know how to live here in a way that's light, laughing through difficulty, cooking through storms, tying one more knot, climbing one more rung, and then handing the rope down to someone else. Scientists, urban planners, and Reddit threads can debate it all they want. But the answer's already written into the walls, scratched into every beam, woven through every pulley. This is home. Not just a place. Not just a set of coordinates. It's a rhythm. A habit of feet on rungs. A language of rope and cloud. A village that doesn't sit still but sways, suspended between earth and sky. You sit with Serene, again at sunset. She hands you tea, no sugar this time. You both watch the clouds crawl by. You'll go, she says. People like you always go. You nod. But part of you, she adds, tapping your chest, might stay. She's probably right. The stars come early here. No street lamps to compete. No city glare. Just darkness arriving like an old friend. Settling quietly over the village. Wrapping every ledge and ladder in shadow and inviting the sky to speak. Tonight, you're climbing one last time. Not because you need to. Not because there's anywhere left to visit. But because some part of you wants to understand what it means to go up one more time. To feel the mountain not just beneath your feet, but inside your rhythm. You start at the base, where the chickens are already roosting in their hammocks. Someone has hung a lantern made of tinned ghee and a cotton wick near the first rung. It flickers, illuminating the ladder in golden light and casting long, spidery shadows on the cliff wall. You reach for the rope. It's familiar now, rough in a way that's oddly comforting. Each knot is known. Each rung is remembered. You begin the ascent in silence. Above, the village has quieted. Smoke drifts from the last evening cook fires. A few murmured conversations still echo off the stone. Someone laughing softly, someone singing to a child. The wind has dropped to a whisper, just enough to make the prayer flags tremble. As you climb, you notice how your body no longer hesitates. Your hands move without question. Your balance shifts without fear. You're no longer conquering the ladder, you're part of it. Halfway up, you pause. The moon has risen. It hangs just over the ridge, casting a silvery light that makes the ropes glow. Below you, the valley is a bowl of cloud. Above, the final tier waits, still and expectant. You keep going. Past the school, past the swing bridge that creaks like an old tune, past the chicken pulley, still tied off for the night. You reach the third tier, the highest homes, where most villagers are already inside, their windows glowing faint orange. You sit down on a flat stone, the same spot where Nima filmed her outro last week. The air is crisp, cold enough to make your breath visible. You exhale slowly and watch it fade into the stars. This is your final night. No fanfare, no farewell ceremony, just this. A quiet seat on a cliff edge, the scent of firewood, the creak of ladders in the wind, and the soft tap of someone boiling tea nearby. Your quirky moment? A goat, Bunti, the judgmental one, sidles up beside you, curls herself into a circle, and promptly falls asleep against your leg like you've always belonged here. Scientists still argue about the long-term viability of villages like Kunde Lingpa, whether they can survive modernity, whether the next generation will leave for good, whether rope can ever replace concrete in the long run. But tonight there's no theory. There's just place, and presence, and peace. Somewhere far above, you imagine the ledge dweller, real or not, sitting on his perch, looking down at the same lights, the same stars, the same ladders swaying gently in the dark. Maybe he smiles. Maybe he tugs a prayer flag a little tighter. And maybe, just maybe, he hums the same tune you've heard all week, drifting through the wind. Half lullaby, half warning, half joke. You lie back on the stone. Bunti snuffles in her sleep. Someone laughs in their sleep across the way. And the village breathes, creaks, shifts. You close your eyes. And just before sleep takes you, you hear one last voice. Not spoken, but felt. Echo through the rope, and wood, and wind. You made it. Let's stay here a little longer. There's no need to climb anymore. No ladders to grip. No pulleys to pull. Just you, the stars above, and the quiet exhale of a village suspended between rock and sky. You're lying still now, muscles softening. The stone beneath you is warm from the day's sun, now gently releasing that heat like a slow goodbye. Bunti, the ever-critical goat, breathes steadily beside you, her tiny bell silent at last. Above, the ropes sway gently, singing a lullaby only the cliffs understand. You feel it, not just in your ears, but in your bones, the rhythm of rope and wind and time. This place doesn't need to shout. It simply holds you. You remember each climb, each knot, each bowl of soup that nearly set your eyebrows on fire. You remember the laughter, the stories, the moments that felt impossibly steep, both on the ladder and in your heart. And now, there's nothing left to do but rest. Let your breath slow. Let your jaw unclench. Let the tension seep out of your shoulders like melting snow. The night wraps tighter around the village, and stillness settles in. Even the cliff seems to sleep. No tremors now. Just trust. Just hush. You are safe here. You are still. The mountain holds you, and the village hums its quiet promise. We are here. We are here. We are here. Drift now, and dream of ladders that never break, soup that never burns, and sky that always makes room for you.